Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game. This is from round 5 of the 2019 Isle of Man chess tournament. It's Magnus Carlsen versus 6-time India champion Surya Shekhar Ganguly, and it will be very interesting to see how this game turns out. Carlsen won a game in round 1 and then he had three extremely fighting draws. He barely escaped defeat in the previous round because everyone is bringing their A game, everyone is bringing the big guns against the world champion, and there's just no moment of rest for him. So without further ado, let's check it out. Carlsen, with the white pieces, opens with e4, which means that he's definitely ready to fight. He doesn't go for the English or some reti or whatever maneuvering ideas. He wants to fight. With c5, Ganguly says, okay, I'm down with it, let's fight. He goes for the Sicilian. With knight to f3 and now d6. With d4, c captures on d4, knight captures and knight to f6. And here, knight to c3, developing the knight, defending d4 pawn, and a6. The Najdorf defense is on the board. And now h3. I believe the most popular way to play against the Najdorf these days, just the early h3. With e5 by Ganguly, pushing the knight back, knight to b3 and bishop to e7, preparing to castle. And g4 by Carlsen. With h6 preventing g5 and now bishop to e3. Developing the bishop, the queen is most likely coming to d2. And then Carlsen will most likely castle queenside with knight b to d7. And here there are games where bishop to g2 was played, or just queen to f3 right away, preparing either kingside or queenside castle. But a4, the move Carlsen plays, is a new move, and it is as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So Ganguly doesn't want to allow a5 for Carlsen to grab even more space on the queenside. He plays b6. Now a5, of course, can be met with b5. And the Carlsen strengthens the center with f3, strengthening e4, with queen to c7, and now comes h4, preparing g5. With knight to f8, remaneuvering this knight over to g6 at some point, and now further preparing g5 with rook to g1. Bishop to e6 by Ganguly, again preparing either to castle queenside, or maybe he will just stick with the king in the center, but you still have to develop pieces. With g5 by Carlsen, h captures, and now comes knight 6 to d7, as this knight freed the d7 square for this knight. And knight to d5. Here Carlsen says, okay, I now have a pretty decent knight. I wouldn't call it a monster knight just yet, it's a very decent knight. Do you want to give up your light square bishop, or do you want to move the queen? So you don't want to give up the bishop pair too early if you don't really gain anything. So queen to c6 by Ganguly, and now queen to d2. Now preparing queenside castle. Knight to g6, now gaining control of the f4 square, and now a5 by Carlsen. He doesn't want to castle just yet, allowing b5 or some ideas that would, or maybe even a5 followed by b5 with ideas of black breaking through on the queen side. So here Carlsen pushes a5, first inviting Ganguly to push b5, and only then will Carlsen castle. With b5 by Ganguly, and only now castles, queenside castles by Carlsen. Rook to c8, now putting pressure along the c file, and the king to b1, a very useful move. Otherwise, if for example this knight moves, bishop captures on b3, you will not be able to recapture. You don't want your king here, so a nice prophylactic move, king to b1. And now knight to c5. Ganguly also gets a very nice outpost for his knight on c5, and here Carlsen could capture. For example, you could go for knight captures, d captures, and now c4, which creates a very interesting setup. For example, after you capture the pawn, you can either go bishop captures on c4, or try rook to c1 before capturing, but either way, it will be a very nice defensive strategy for white on the queen side, as black will not have all that many options of taking advantage of the semi-open b file. However, it's still a semi-open b file. If you don't need to allow this, you don't have to. So instead of capturing right away, Carlsen just develops bishop to e2. He connects rooks, and now bishop to d8, not allowing any captures on e7. Also, maybe with ideas of getting this knight back into the game this way. Here, Carlsen decides to capture with knight captures on c5, d captures on c5, and now f4. Just pushing that pawn, trying to bust open the center, as Ganguly's king still occupies the e8 central square. E captures on f4 with bishop captures on f4, and here it's not all that easy to find a move for black. what do you do here? The most interesting line is rook to h4. You just go after this bishop, and once the bishop moves, you pick up the e4 pawn. But it's a very interesting line, hard to decide for black if you want to go for this. Bishop g3, rook captures, and now bishop to f3. And now it's getting very uncomfortable. For example, if you trade here, queen captures, we have bishop captures, rook captures, and now rook back to e7. It's this position here where black is up a pawn. It's 5 pawns against 4, but it's black's pieces aren't doing all that great. White has a monster bishop pair here. The other rook can come to e1. Not at the moment. It can come to d1. You can easily double rooks here, and it's just a much more active position for white. So even though Ganguly has the opportunity to go for rook to h4 here and such lines, it's too passive of a position. So instead, he goes bishop to e7, probably with ideas of clearing the d8 square for the rook. But now Carlsen has a very nice idea. He plays knight captures on e7 with king captures on e7, now also making room for the other rook to enter the game, but bishop to d6 check first. Of course, Carlsen doesn't allow it. We have rook, king to e8, and now queen to c3, now attacking the g7 pawn. So what do you do here? We have rook to h7, defending the pawn, and now bishop back to g3. It's the best square for the bishop, just keeping an eye on all the squares the knight can use to enter the game, and also it prepares rook to d6, which will be very uncomfortable for Ganguly. Ganguly pushes b4, attacks Carlsen's queen, and here Carlsen plays queen to d3. Queen to d3 with the idea of going to d6, but even better than queen to d3 seems to be queen to f3, because Carlsen's queen to d3 is inviting c4 with tempo. But here, after queen to f3, you don't really have a good continuation with black here. You can just go rook to d6, and here, after this rook comes to f1, you will have a lot of very dangerous threats here. For example, if you still continue with the attack without gaining tempo with c4, just rook to d6 is very strong, and after the queen moves, you're going to go rook to f1 as planned. Now with ideas of capturing here, it's a very unpleasant idea, and after queen b7, just guarding this, you get rook to b6, and you just win more and more space and slowly but surely mount your attack until success. But Carlsen gets a different idea. He plays queen to d3, invites Ganguly to push c4. It's now a very active move, as it comes with an attack on the queen. Queen to d6, offering a queen trade. And here, the time on the clock, since a lot of you mentioned that you enjoy this, is 20 minutes Carlsen and 13.5 minutes Ganguly. Carlsen wants to trade queens here. Of course, if trades captures, then it's, again, a very active position for white. If rook c5 going after the a5 pawn, Carlsen has rook gd1 with some very interesting threats along the d file. For example, if rook captures on a5, then you get rook to b6. Now, the bishop can also come to d6, or whatever you try, rook c5, for example, bishop to d6, rook to c8, and now rook captures on a6. And it's just a very ugly position for black. This king is not doing all that great. You will pick up these pawns, and, well, it's just a much better position for white. So here, Ganguly doesn't like trading in this position. He plays queen captures on e4 instead. He grabs the piece here, and here, Carlsen thought for about 5 minutes, and he played rook to d4. Attacking the queen and also offering a bishop on e2. Rook g to e1 is also very interesting. Rook d to e1 also very interesting. But rook to d4 just asks Ganguly, what do you do here? Do you want to capture the bishop? It's a very juicy bishop. So what happens if you capture the bishop? If you capture it, then you get into a lot of trouble after rook to e1. And now, after rook to e1, you have to give up the queen or give up the rook with rook to h1. Because if you don't, if you play something like queen f3, it's actually a beautiful forcing line. Even feel free to pause the video and try to find it. It's a mate in 3, but you will feel happy about yourself when you find it. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding such a wonderful mate in 3. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's queen d7 check. Of course, the bishop is pinned, you cannot capture it. And once you move king to f8, now you get queen captures on c8. That's the good stuff. It's check, you have to capture, or you go king e7 followed by queen to d8 mate, so you will have to capture the queen. And now rook to d8 is mate because the rook covers the e7 square. So just a very nice setup with a nice queen sacrifice. So Ganguly decided, yeah, we're not gonna touch that bishop. We're going back, queen to b7. And here Carlsen just offers a trade once again, and it's still a very unpleasant trade for black. Not an unpleasant trade. If you trade, you're just lost. If queen captures, rook captures, there's no way to prevent the queening of the pawn. Bishop already guards b8. You're just gonna push b7, b8, and that's it. So after queen to b6, we have queen to a8, pushing the queen all the way back, and now rook g to d1. Having a lot of threats here. The most obvious one is bishop to f3, just offering this bishop for rook to d8, as black needs both the queen and the rook to guard the d8 square, since all of white's pieces are piling up on the d8 square. So here, Ganguly found a very interesting rook to h1. Now, he doesn't allow this bishop to f3 because after one trade happens on the d1 square, then the bishop sacrifice no longer works. But Carlsen avoids it, bishop to e1. Now he's just transferring the bishop over to b4, which will again keep the king in the center of the board. Knight to e5 by Ganguly, and now comes the bishop captures on sorry, that's wrong bishop. Bishop captures on b4. Situation on the clock: 14 minutes for Carlsen and 4 minutes for Ganguly, and you still need 5 more minutes to reach time control. Rook captures on d1. Ganguly trades a pair of rooks. Rook captures on d1, and now queen to c6, offering a queen trade. Trying to trade off everything with rook to d8 doesn't work. Rook captures, queen captures, and now just queen captures on a6. You don't have anything to do here with black. White will just move the queen, start pushing the past a pawn, and that's just it. Not on b6, but maybe even on b6, but the past a pawn will just be extremely strong with the white king still stuck in the center. So after this rook captures on d1, we have queen to c6. Now Ganguly wants to trade queens, but now it's Carlsen who declines. Queen to e3 with an attack on the knight. Queen to b5, defending the knight, also attacking the bishop here. We have bishop back to c3, not allowing... Interestingly, queen to b5 was played with 2 seconds on the clock, so Ganguly almost ran out on time. And he would, of course, gained his 30 seconds increment. Bishop back to c3, instantly played. Carlsen doesn't allow Ganguly to think during Carlsen's time, and now rook to c5. The knight is attacked twice, so now the knight is defended twice. So now, once again, feel free to pause the video and try to find the best winning move for Carlsen in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding such a nice move that wins a piece. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's b4. Maybe not an easy move to find because you think like, yeah, okay, what's b4 doing? I mean, obviously I can't capture it, the b pawn is pinned, but the point is you cannot capture en passant because you lose the queen, the c pawn is pinned, and on the other hand, if you don't move it, then queen captures on c5 is happening, not of course pawn captures. So here you don't really have a good option. If rook d5, you just capture, rook captures, queen captures, and now there's only one defender, just queen captures or bishop captures here, and you're down a whole piece, it's game over. So here Ganguly tried knight to d3, but it still doesn't help him. Carlsen just captured it, and here, yeah, you don't gain anything by recapturing. The d3 square is covered twice. We have rook to d5, now getting the rook out of the way, not allowing queen to capture, and now just d captures on c4, attacking both the queen and the rook, and it was in this position on move 41 that Surya Shekhar Ganguly resigned the game after reaching time control. He resigned because, well, your queen and rook are under attack. Obviously, we're going to capture here. Rook captures. After bishop captures and queen captures on c4, you're just down a piece and you don't have any counterplay. King c1, and the bishop pair is more than enough to guard you from any threats. For example, if queen a2, with some threats, it doesn't really matter. Bishop moves, and there are no checks here. Everything is covered. Bishop covers a1. This bishop covers this diagonal. Queen covers a3. So no point in trying anything here. If you check, you can just bring the bishop back. It's not a problem. Everything is protected. You're down a piece. It's completely lost. So yeah, after d captures on c4, Ganguly resigned the game, and a victory in round 5 for Magnus Carlsen, who after incredibly tough 3 past games is now again on 3.5 out of 5, which is not all that bad. So he might be able to rejoin the leaders if he has a couple of good games now. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Gritz Krastinch and James Dunn for a contribution to my channel. I really appreciate it. James Dunn asked if there are any games of human players playing against Stockfish or Alpha Zero. I don't think anyone ever played against Alpha Zero, or at least not to my knowledge. Maybe Matthew Sadler played against it. Maybe just to help him with the book, you know, the Game Changer book on Alpha Zero. Other than that, I don't think so. But against Stockfish, some people have played it. For example, Nakamura played. Oh well, he played against a couple of levels of Stockfish, but but it's also I think the ones we covered were against Komodo. I don't think he was in. He wanted to know if it was against Stockfish or maybe against a really strong engine. So I know that Nakamura likes to have some fun with it on his streams, but other than that, not really. I think we even covered one game. But that's about it. I don't think anyone is crazy enough to challenge the engines. Not yet, at least. We have to wait for that chosen one to you know, help us fight the machines. But yeah, once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the chess.com Isle of Man chess tournament, checking up on your wonderful suggestions. There are so many games, so please do use #suggestion, and of course following up on everything that happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.